Welcome, everyone, to today's conversation rooted in justice, youth advocacy at the crossroads of health and culture, which is a part of the Campaign for Tobacco Free Kids Campaign for the Culture. Today, we're exploring how youth leadership is transforming public health and tobacco prevention. We have some incredible panelists who bring personal, cultural, and community driven perspectives. Introducing Nicole Sutton.
Hi there, I'm Nicole Sutton with the Youth Engagement Alliance. I'm the key liaison.
Jeremiah Morgan.
Hey everyone, I'm Jeremiah. I am a youth ambassador for Campaign for Tobacco Free Kids, and I'm the social media manager for Breathe Easy SC.
Riley Devereaux.
Hello, everyone. My name is Riley Devereaux. I'm part of Jack and Jill's Future Black Legislators of America and the state chair for She's in Office Virginia and the outreach director for Virginia Young Democrats Disability Caucus.
And last but not least, Nevia Charles.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nevia Charles. I am the Health Equity Co-Chairwoman for the National Council of Negro Women Howard Section. I am also a public speaker and educator on sickle cell and health equity throughout the nation.
Very cool. Welcome. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Let's start with what inspired each of you to step into advocacy. Every movement begins with a story. So, Jeremiah, what first motivated you to speak out about drug and tobacco prevention at such a young age?
So what kind of inspired me to start doing it was actually it started out in middle school. I never got into smoking and all other types of drug use, but people that I was close with did end up starting up. And I started noticing signs such as change in personality. And I slowly did start to notice that their friend groups would slowly start kind of gravitating away from them because of the new personality traits they were getting. They would be less interactive, kind of keep to themselves, and you could see like they would constantly cough. And what I also noticed is that they would get sick really often, and it also kind of drove people away. So that being said, I kind of didn't want like people that were close to me, because I did in fact did lose someone to drug use. They were smoking cigarettes, and it got to a point where I stopped seeing them around, and I did eventually get news that they did pass away. So that was kind of like a big drive for me to start advocacy work, because I didn't want other people that were close to me to start passing away as well.
Wow, that's so incredibly powerful. And it really shows you like how you care about the other people in your community, which I think is so important. And Riley, how did civic engagement and leadership first become meaningful for you?
Yes, thank you. So my whole entire life, I live near Washington, D.C. So I've been surrounded by politics and advocacy. So I felt that being surrounded by it and seeing what everyone's been able to achieve has motivated me to become more interested. At a young age, I saw numerous issues in my school and in my community that I had an issue with and thought that needed to be addressed. So by talking to my peers and local leaders, I was able to learn a different things that I can do to make a difference. And once you start making a difference, you want to continue. And then you look for different ways to continue to foster change, but to also get more individuals involved so they can also foster change. So I feel like through taking different leadership positions, I've not only motivated myself to do more, but I've had the ability to motivate the people around me. And as once you see the impact that it has on your community, you just want to continue and do more and foster more change.
Wow, that is so cool. Well, thank you so much for fostering change in your community. I think that's so great. Nevia, how did your personal health journey shape your passion for health equity?
Well, as some of you may know, and as others may not, I do have sickle cell anemia. So I have sickle cell type SS, which is a genetic blood disorder, predominantly affects Black and brown groups, but can be contracted by anyone. It's something that you're born with, and it is an extremely difficult condition to live with. I spent a lot of my childhood in a lot of pain. I spent a lot of my childhood not being able to do a lot of the things that my peers in the same age bracket were able to do. And me understanding that I was different and that I was having such a difficult time navigating my health journey, I knew that there were many other people like me who felt the same. And I realized that not very many people outside of my community and my household cared about the condition that I had because it was so understudied and so underfunded. So that let me know that if we're not going to help ourselves, no one else is going to help us. And it really got myself and my family very motivated to get out into the community and put boots to the pavement to change our lived experience. We started hosting blood drives, we started hosting bone marrow drives, and really educating ourselves. So not only could I have a better quality of life and lived experience, but so that we could also positively impact that lived experience for those around us as well.
Wow. I think it's so great that you've used your own experiences to kind of advocate for other people who might not be able to advocate for themselves. That's incredible. And Nicole, what experiences in your early career made you realize that youth voices were essential to health justice?
That's a great question. So I think undoubtedly young people, I've watched young people bring to this work a tremendous amount of energy, really infusing that energy in to movements and all of the efforts that we've done over the years in creative ways, like bringing so many new ideas and perspective. And then, of course, really watched young people bring their personal experiences, like some that we're hearing right now on this call, to the work that we've been doing. And I also just want to say that I think that I've watched young people just be so brave and just have a lot of guts to do the work that I think sometimes with adults, like over time, we don't have as much sort of like guts to do some of the things that I've watched
Mhm.
young people do and share. And then I think the thing that has moved me the most, especially working with young people in like advocacy when we're working with decision makers, is really the ability for young people to reach legislators at really that heart and mind levels, both of those levels, which is extremely effective and powerful when you're trying to create, meaningful change that's going to affect, the communities and society that we live in.
Yeah, absolutely. Like young people are such an essential part of the community, and a community is such a big driver for change among all the youth advocates, how they said before. And each of you guys bring your own culture, identity, and story to your work. I want to hear a little bit more about how your experiences shape the way you guys see health justice. So, Riley, how has your experience in Jack and Jill shaped the way you show up as a young advocate, especially when speaking on issues that directly impact Black youth and families?
So I would say Jack and Jill actually was one of the reasons that I first got involved in advocacy. When I was in elementary school, I went on a Jack and Jill trip to Birmingham, Alabama. And while I was in Birmingham, Alabama, we got to learn about the Children's Crusade of 1963, where young Black children who were around my age marched against discrimination. And we basically got to walk in their footsteps for a different cause. So just by learning about my history and by learning about what they did to have so that I could have the rights and opportunities that I have today, I felt like it definitely served as a motivation for me to get involved. And throughout my many years in Jack and Jill's, there have been many instances where we've had the opportunity to speak to legislators, speak to school leaders, and honestly just use our voice to advocate, especially with the new Future Black Legislators of America cohort. We are being giving more tools so that we can succeed in the future and encourage more African American children to use their voice to make a difference.
Great. So, Nevia, you've spoken about the dual role of culture as both your strength and a vulnerability. How do you navigate that balance in your work?
Um, the word culture stands out to me in this question. And to me, culture and identity are synonymous. So, in the context of the United States and really just Western society, um, having a marginalized identity, whether that be in terms of race, in terms of gender, class, or even in this context, disability status, you already are automatically sequestered to being part of a vulnerable population. And when you have that experience, it's something that you have to learn how to navigate the line between vulnerability and strength. When you are vulnerable and you live within that identity on a day to day, it forces you to be strong, whether you like it or not. And I think that that's something that needs to be taken more deeply into consideration just as we are communing with people around us, but especially when it comes to the work of health equity and public health, because you have to really and truly understand that someone's background and identity, their culture, all play a huge and major role into their quality of life and the quality of care that they receive. And it also helps to inform clinicians, physicians, even other community members how they can deliver quality care to someone of a particular background. For me, being someone with sickle cell, I can't walk into an emergency room and expect that I'm going to automatically receive the same level of care that maybe my white or non-disabled counterparts can receive. And I think that that's something that has given me lots of resilience, a lot of self-awareness, but has also further driven me to really educate a lot of others on what the needs of different populations are and really make sure that we all are coming from an equitable playing field. Because when you serve the most marginalized group in the room, then you're automatically going to be serving everyone else in the process.
Wow, I think it's so interesting to see how youth advocates feel behind the scenes. We usually see them on a big podium or on big screen, so it's nice to get a different view of things. Jeremiah, how has your experience growing up in South Carolina influenced your understanding of community health challenges?
So in South Carolina, there are people that South Carolina has a culture of drug use. Like they don't hide it at all, and they actually embrace it. So growing up, I would see other students that would smoke and do drug use on the daily. They would get with friends and family, and even adults would smoke with their kids. And like I said, since people embrace it, they they would come to school and they would kind of tell us all about the different stuff. They would hide the health difficulties that came with it, and it would kind of let us know. So with that information, it would kind of make it easier for me to kind of hit certain points. Like since I'm part of several youth groups, I'm part of a youth group known as Fire Squad, which stands for Fearless Individuals Reaching Excellence. And we give out surveys that kind of give us data. But since people at school tend to embrace the little health difficulties that come with smoking and vaping, it kind of made it easier for us to hit certain points, know what to do, what drugs are sort of popping more than others, and see what kind of events and what information we need to give to the public to give people the information they need and kind of tell them all about the health difficulties that come with certain drugs.
Thank you so much. I think that kind of reflects what Nevia was talking about how your background can sometimes be a vulnerability, but in this case, you've embraced it and turned it into a strength that's become an essential part of your advocacy, which I think is just so innovative. So, Nicole, you've worked across diverse communities. How do you encourage youth to bring their full potential, their full identities into public health spaces?
That's a great question. I think that one of the things that I always reflect on too, which I think we're hearing here, is that culture and identity really have a lot to do with that lived experience, right, that we have. And it's what makes our experience unique and extremely powerful. And so I think as an adult, one of the things that I'm responsible for is helping to create the spaces, right? Intentional spaces and opportunities where young people are able to share about their experiences, share about their identity, and that creates kind of an organizational culture, right? And so the more that we foster that sense of like it being a space where different perspectives, different experiences are valuable, and they can be, really channeled to create meaningful change. I think that's when, young people feel comfortable. And, you know, I want to say one more thing on that too, because I think as adults, like sometimes I feel like we, you know, we're building rapport with young people. That's one of the most important things, is to build those like genuine relationships with the young people that we work in partnership with. And part of doing that is also being real and sharing our own experiences to build that sense of, you know, that it's okay. Like we should all be talking about these things because we're all learning from one another.
Yeah, I think not only is it about the youth advocates and what work they're doing, but also shout out to you and the incredible work that you invest in these students to help spotlight their identity and authenticity, which are such integral parts in building trust and power in advocacy. Because we all know that youth advocacy isn't easy at all, especially when we're facing large systems like big tobacco. So I want to talk a little bit about the challenges you guys have faced and how you guys have found your own power. Jeremiah, what barriers do youth advocates face in your community, and how have you pushed through them?
Some barriers I come across in my fellow youth is actually can other youth, because things that people we talk about, like kids going through peer pressure and just being pressured to do these things to fit in, people forget that youth advocates ourselves, we face those same problems. We are faced with peer pressure on a daily, and sometimes it can be hard because people look at you some type of way. Like in my community, I'm fire squad is a pretty known thing. So people actually, since the place I live in, smoking and other drug substance use, it's a common thing. So people do look at me some type of way for what I do for youth advocacy. And they kind of want to picture it as lame, and that can actually take a toll on our mental health. But what helps me push through is the fact that I'm not facing these problems alone, and that there are actually other youth advocates like myself that I can relate to, that we all face these same problems. So sometimes even after events are over, me and the other youth advocates, we kind of vent our problems to each other because we all face these problems as well.
Wow, I think that really reflects on how resilient you are as a youth advocate, especially when other youth are one of the biggest challenges that you face. That's just so powerful, and like mad props to you for doing that. Riley, how do you make sure youth input isn't just heard, but actually acted on by policymakers?
Yeah, so from my experience lobbying, to make sure that policymakers are actually listening to you, it is essential that you come prepared. If you're going to be talking about legislation or a bill, you need to have researched it. You need to know the co-sponsors, the co-signers. You need to know all the information, if it's been introduced before. Because at the end of the day, if you come there and you seem rushed or seem that you haven't prepared, they're not going to take you seriously, because at the end of the day, it is their time. So by coming there and talking confidently and letting them know that you know what you're talking about, you are definitely more likely for them to understand your message and have it resonate with them. Also, by trying to have a personal story. So if there's something and a connection you have with certain bills or certain legislation, just coming with from your experience and hearing from them tends to really resonate with the policymakers. And again, just be consistent. Don't just like talk about a bill or a policy once and leave it alone. Reach back out to them, email them, talk to their staff, let them know that this is something that they cannot ignore. Because if you just leave it alone, then they might ignore it. But if you let them know, hey, we are your constituents and that you need to address this, they are more likely to handle and support the legislation.
Totally. That does seem like a recipe to success, being prepared not only with the facts, but also with your own testimony, and also making sure to follow up with extra information in the future. But we do know not everything can be perfect. So, Nevia, I want to hear a little bit from you. What's one example of resistance you faced in trying to make change, and how have you persevered throughout that?
I think that's a great question. Anytime that you are trying to change the status quo, you're going to be meeting resistance from the institution that you're trying to change. People don't want to change. People have things, ingrained in our society for a reason, because it works for a certain subset or a certain group of people. So we know that that's going to be given with the territory, that we're going to be running into resistance from outside forces or from the things that we're trying to change. But the thing that stands out to me the most when trying to make change is kind of ties in even to what Jeremiah was saying. When you receive resistance from the people that you're trying to serve or the people that you're serving alongside, I think that it can be very difficult to go up against certain forces and difficult to really stay as consistent as Riley was saying and to follow up and do the things that are necessary to make that happen. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. And if it was easy, it probably would have already been done. So I think the kind of resistance that stands out to me the most is the institutions that we are up against, of course, but also the conditioning that we've already received within ourselves. Some of us feel like it's too hard to make change, and it can be very, it can be a huge deterrent. And I think that that's something that has tried to, take me down as well. There's been times that as a youth advocate, I've definitely been exhausted. I've been apathetic at times. Like we all go through these things, just like Jeremiah was saying. But I think the things that have helped me persevere to push against the resistance in my own communities, as well as pushing against the resistance from the institutions that I'm trying to change, are being able to commune with others who are like me, who have similar goals in mind, who value similar things, and just finding ways to make sure that I'm pouring back into myself so that I can sustain all the work that needs to be done to make that change happen.
Wow, that's spectacular. Not a lot of people can push through and be resilient like that. And one of the most eloquent things I heard you say was, if it had already been so easy, it would have already been done. And that's just such a testament to the work that you guys have been doing up until now. So, Nicole, you mentor many youth leaders. What are some of the best practices as an adult partner in helping you young advocates overcome tokenism or burnout, like Nivea was saying?
Okay, well, this is again a really important question, especially thinking about, sometimes um, adults have ideas, right, about what young people's roles should be, what their capacities are, and what they should want to do. And so I think one of the most important things is really, as an adult who's working as a partner with young people in this work, we need to really be asking, first of all, what do young people want to do? Like from their perspective, how do they want to contribute their time and their talents to this, and what is their, and what kind of capacity and time do they have to do so? Because I think so much of the health justice work and the movement, right, is focused around the value of self-determination, and so we want to be practicing self-determination in a way that we work with the young people who, are our partners. We can't do the work without them. And so I think it really is, like, again, I said it earlier and I'll say it again, building relationships that are genuine, where there's really treating each other with a deep respect, for being a human in the amount of commitments that we all have, and that young people especially they have so much going on. So when we have genuine relationships, we can really talk about how someone's doing, what they have the capacity to do, and how they're feeling along the way. Because it's also okay to change your mind, right? To be doing something and then say, you know what, I need to take a step back because I have these other things going on. So being conscious of that and practicing the values of health justice work in all ways, from the inside out.
Wow, I think that's so powerful how we're practicing this on the inside. And because we're strengthening these groups from the inside, we're able to become better advocates as a group on the outside and actually enact change across different systems. And a common theme I'm seeing here is that a lot of the barriers you guys face are not only from the policy perspective with getting in touch with legislatures, actually getting to hear your voice and following through with them, but also from your own peers. These are such a plethora of challenges that you guys have faced, but because you guys have been able to group together and really rely on each other and depend on each other, you guys have been able to grow and really enact some powerful change within your own communities. And it's so important to um, connect with each other and work together and collaborate to share power between youth advocates and also their adult allies rather than control any single group controlling it. And that's especially important considering the innovation of the tobacco and vaping industry. These industries, they use culture, social media, and identity to target young people, as we all know. But you guys are reclaiming those same tools for truth and empowerment. So I want to talk about how you guys are doing that. Nevia, you use storytelling and digital media. How can creative expression drive health justice?
I absolutely adore that question. I think it is exciting to me because I think that this is where the fun part starts. We're always reading up on the things and educating ourselves and, holding our megaphones and our signs and things like that. And that can definitely be empowering and motivating in and of itself. But when you get to lean into your self-expression and, creativity, I think that that is where your personal identity and your personal flair can shine through. And that's also what makes it palatable to the people. It's how make the medicine sweet as you're delivering it. And I think that we can look to some of our creative leaders for examples or for a blueprint in spaces like this. If we think of James Baldwin, we can think how he said that all artists have a responsibility to the people. It's important for all artists to have artistic integrity and hold up a mirror to be a witness to the times and to drive change. If you think of any of the times like the Black Power movements or the civil rights movements, a lot of times artists were the ones that were helping be a driving force to any of this change to happen on a major scale, because you need the buy-in of your community, and it's easier for your community to connect with you through creativity and through art because art is universal. It also is really important too if we look to the blueprint of the Black Panthers. They were the vanguard of the revolution because they weren't just staying, in the realms of academia and keeping things at such a high level that oftentimes goes over people's heads if they're not already experts in the field. So it's really important when we look at what the work the Black Panthers have done. They had their political education and broke it down to bite-sized pieces. They made it engaging. They made it eye-catching with the newspapers they had. They broke it down into layman's terms because they understood the people that need it most are the people that might not fully understand the ramifications or the full breadth of information that they're trying to deliver. And I think that when we have those examples and also our natural connection to creativity as a form of communication with the rest of the world, it's easy to give us direction for how we can start changing the things that we need to change in our society. For me, for example, I am a huge creative person, even though that's not my day to day, that's not my 9 to 5 yet. It is something that I really love to lean into because it's also healing. So whether I'm doing it just for me to be able to get through my day to day as someone dealing with excruciatingly painful sickle cell disease, or if I'm doing it to further communicate, my values and the things that I'm trying to have social impact for to the rest of my community, I think it's something that I've really enjoyed pouring into and enjoyed cultivating. I have my own platforms that I love to really curate. So via Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, any way that, I can reach out to my peers, it's something that I'm going to use and leverage my social platforms to not only, have the razzle dazzle and the beautifully curated Instagram feed, but to also make sure I'm delivering the messages that need to be heard by the people around me.
Wow. Well, I'm really glad that this is something you enjoy. Going back to this theme of resilience and all the challenges that come with being an advocate, if you really enjoy powerful storytelling or you enjoy social media, it's going to make things a lot more easier, I'm guessing. And I think this is also a really important part of advocacy that isn't usually talked about. Like I said earlier, the tobacco and vaping industry. their predatory advertising is so pervasive and is so thought through. It really requires creative storytellers and creative people that are also manipulating media to tell a powerful story. Because a big part of being an advocate and a good advocate is using your communication, using your ability to create art to really empathize with others, to empathize with policymakers, but also the youth around you who might be giving you a challenge, but you can really connect to them with your art and with your storytelling capabilities. So, Jeremiah, how can local youth use social media to challenge harmful narratives or misinformation?
That's a good question. So, with social media, it's a very underrated because people use it for either the wrong reasons or don't use it to its full capacity. But social media is a big part of society today, and it can really help with really anything. It's all over the place. You can find anything you want on it. And with social media, is also a big way that drug industries reach their community, especially youth, because there is a thing social media has called a for you page, and for those who aren't aware, it basically it takes what you want and it uses that to create recommendations. So when kids look at certain creators who smoke a lot or maybe like stories on Instagram that have to do with smoking, the for you page will pick up on that and it will start recommending those type of stuff. And the more people see it, the more they want to do it. They want to be like the people they're watching. So a way that kids can prevent that is kind of slowly start moving away, stop watching that type of stuff, stop liking it, and maybe even unfollowing certain people that tend to do it too much. Because like I said, the for you page picks up on that type of stuff and will start recommending it to you more. And if kids, another thing that drug industries do is false advertising. False advertising because they know that predatory marketing, their youth, we can be impressionable at times. So they can see something simple and they can take it as fact, but because they don't bother to do the research. So with that being said, we have a whole plethora. We have Google, Bing, Microsoft. We have so many search engines that we can use to sort of look up this information and back it up so we don't fall for misinformation. And if we would do that, and if people do that, it can make advocacy work a lot easier and sort of also help our community to prevent us from falling for
Okay, I think we had some. Are you
did that
back,
go on?
Jeremiah?
Okay, I'm back. I'm back. So do I need to restart from the top?
Not from the top, like about like 20 seconds, your last 20 seconds.
Oh, last 20 seconds. Okay. So basically I was saying we have all these search engines, Google, Bing, and Microsoft. And basically if we took the time to do the research, we could really prevent a lot of problems if people could sort of back up the information that we see on the internet. Because like I said, kids can be impressionable and they kind of just take what they see and they go with it. So if we would I recommend people in the community to start sort of, looking up what they see and don't just go off of what they see first, because false advertising is a big and real thing. And that is how drug industries get to their customers and community.
Yeah, I totally agree. Definitely, like the lack of misinformation is one of the biggest contributors to youth who end up getting addicted to tobacco because they don't have the entire picture. So I think the first step that not even just youth, but everyone can do is just be a little bit more aware on social media. So Riley, what strategies do you find most effective in mobilizing and keeping peers engaged?
Thank you. So, one of the first things is obviously we can utilize social media. People my age are consistently on social media. So, by being active on Instagram for different accounts, so for like a lot of my advocacy organizations, we try to post multiple times a week and we try to post different information or quotes or Instagram reels that will get people engaged. So, if it's posting something funny, connecting it with a famous movie or famous celebrity, just something that's trending. It's easy to get more views, more followers, so that more people will be interested. But once you get people interest, you need to keep their attention. So by reaching out, for once I get someone to follow or become a member of an organization, I make sure to reach out to them, introduce myself, and try to get a one-on-one conversation on how they can involve and how they would like to best be utilized to support our cause. I also think it's important to try to search and find more opportunities for individuals, especially youth, to be involved in advocacy. For example, on one of my things, I set up an opportunities database for individuals to find different opportunities. And I think it's great that we continue to support each other during our endeavors because there's been many instances where different youth advocates have felt in competition with each other and they don't want to support. But at the end of the day, I believe that we're all in this together. And that's why it's important to try to build connections with different peers. And by building different connections, I've been able to build like a system of networking for different youth advocates where we can reach out to each other and support each other's policy and advocacy goals and also just connect with other people. So on Instagram, I'll DM people who I think maybe have interested in something involved with politics and advocacies, and just by reaching out to them, they reach out to their friends. And it's basically a cycle of more and more people continuously getting involved. And I think, of course, social media is a great tool, but also one on one. Like if you're in school, if there's different clubs that have different interests or for different demographic groups who may be more interested in certain issues, it's good to like go and truly engage with the community. And by building relationships within the community, the cycle will continue and you can get more people on the local level involved because everyone always knows someone else who wants to advocate. And I feel like a lot of youth do see what's going on in this world and do want to make a difference. However, they're simply unaware of what they can do. So by allowing different youth to know about these different opportunities, know about these different events, then they can get more involved because at the end of the day, we can't do this alone. But when we come together and we are stronger and get more done.
Wow, I think that also again reflects along how when we're together, we get so much more done than if we're all separate. And I really liked Riley about how you said you kind of needed to take a different approach, like not just meeting people at a conference, but also reaching out to them on Instagram, kind of taking a really creative approach to meet people, such as how Nevia takes a really creative approach with storytelling and digital media. So, Nevia, can you give us some examples of how you let your creativity shine in your youth advocacy projects?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said earlier, that's one of my favorite things to do. And I've really been leaning more deeply into digital advocacy, social media, and influencer marketing. And I think that's been one of the greatest avenues for me to have a wider reach with the things that I value, like sickle cell and health equity. I could maybe point out some of the highlights from this year. I definitely really enjoyed curating some content around sickle cell just to give some high level information of what is sickle cell, how do you get it, because it is a genetic disease, but some people aren't aware of that. How can you help a sickle cell warrior? How do you show up for a sickle cell warrior? And that content tends to do pretty well because it's something that people can easily connect to, even if they aren't able to relate to it. They may know someone in their life who has sickle cell, but this is a way that they're finally informed about what it is or how to support that person in their life. Offline, I really enjoyed being able to curate some in-person events and in my public speaking engagements with organizations like Cayenne Wellness or the Sickle Cell Community Consortium. I've had some really fun times being able to be creative in those ways as well. For example, with SC3, or the Sickle Cell Community Consortium, I was a part of developing some youth-led programming where I named one of our icebreaker sessions called Sparking the Warrior Within. And that is a concept that I started developing after realizing that that was something I needed for myself in a therapy session. When you're going through the difficult experiences of being a disabled person or having a chronic illness, sometimes you need that spark to help lead you out of the dark times or the dark places. And I'm like, if this is something that I know I needed to keep me motivated, I know that other people need this as well. And we were able to get very creative with finding a way to really build an engaging youth session around that. And that one did really great. People were very excited that we were able to speak directly to the youth and have a way to engage them, because oftentimes the youth are discredited, in things that really matter and are important, as if they're not also experiencing needs for public health and health equity. Following that, I was really excited to work with Cayenne Wellness and get creative. I wonder if I'm able to, I might be able to share some of that digitally as well, but I was able to get creative with my advocacy in that way. We had some sketches that we were able to put together to really help depict what the lived experience of having sickle cell and sickle cell pain looks like. And that one was very fun because we got to work together with some actors and comedians within the sickle cell community that are extremely skilled, and they were able to navigate us through that very important and oftentimes heavy conversation in a way that was jovial, fun, easy to connect to, and entertaining. And in that same conference, I was also able to share some of my spoken word poetry about what it is to be a warrior woman. And for me, being able to have such a diverse, different diverse avenues that I can communicate with this experience is why it's important, and why it's important for our community to support us. And as we support one another, it's really been a beautiful benefit, because I know not everyone wants to sit through, a lecture or a health talk. But when we're able to communicate like this in a relatable and fun and engaging way, we can go much further. So those are some of the creative ways that I've been able to advocate this year.
Yeah, well, I completely agree that we're able to go much further when we're communicating in a way that meets people where they are. But I also agree that you are one warrior woman, Nevia, if I can say anything at all. But Nicole, from your experience with YEA, how can adult allies and organizations amplify these youth-led campaigns effectively?
Well, I think so much from an adult perspective of trying to support young people, like you said, to amplify, is really to help young people get access to what they need to do the work. And unfortunately, we live in a world that, I think we heard that reflected here, that young people aren't always they're not always given access to those things that are going to allow them to do the work. And so that's what we try to do. How do we get young people into spaces where they may not have access to without an adult ally who's, helping them to get access? How do we help them get funding or other types of resources or opportunities, as Riley talked about? So I see a lot of that, right? That's what we do to try to try to amplify. But I also think that so much of the adult work is also overall advocating for young people as not only future leaders, but as leaders now, current, valuable, essential to the work that we're doing. And so I think that's really would be my call to action to all adults who, whether you work directly with young people in health justice work, or, you work within other organizations, we really need to normalize seeing young people as valuable partners now, not just down the future or in the future, and down the line. But it's really important that we stick to that value, that there's nothing for youth without youth involved in determining what those solutions look like.
Great. Thank you so much. I think that's definitely an important balance, that the adults are really there to amplify what the youth are advocating for, and also how culture can be a site of both harm and healing. But you guys, the youth, you guys are redefining it. But I want to talk about looking ahead. We have all these challenges, all this resilience. What about the future? The youth health movement, it's growing incredibly fast. I want to hear about what gives you guys hope and what do you guys want to see next? Jeremiah, what gives you hope about the next generation of youth advocates?
What gives me hope about the next generation would definitely be society evolving. We have way more methods on how we can do things now. A few decades back, we didn't even have social media like that. So we can definitely use new stuff to our advantages, such as social media and even culture evolving. Because where I'm from, people have been taking advantage of our culture, and people are more open than what we used to be. With my community, we have events such as pep rallies and football games, and more people come out than apparently what I've heard from adults. This society is more social now. Yeah, people stay inside. People tend to be inside more often, but when it comes to big events where I'm from, people do come out much more. And I would like to say that with social media too, in that sense, people connect way better on social media as well, and kids utilize social media. So if we get more people uh, to start seeing where we're coming from, if we start pushing more of our advocacy work on social media and more popular events and stuff like that, we could really get more more reach.
Great. Riley, what message about health or justice do you think resonates most with your generation?
I would say something that resonates most with our generation that is connected to both health and justice is honestly equality. I believe that my generation believes that no matter where you come from, your background, or your experience, you deserve the right to life and you deserve the right to different opportunities and you have a high quality life. Meaning, for health, that everyone deserves the right to have the different medicines and resources that they need to survive and do my work of like disability advocacy. I'm with Black maternal health and different advocacy. All the message that resonates for all of us is that we need to do what is needed to be done to make sure that everyone has the right to live the life that they deserve. And that's through breaking down barriers and reaching out to our legislators and leaders who may not be giving everyone what they needed. And I feel like a lot of youth, we see a lot of greed, especially from different corporations when it comes, especially to health. And I believe that our generation has been calling them out so that we can guarantee that everyone is able to live the life that they want and should have.
Wow, I think that's really interesting about how, like, a lot of these issues really affect our young generation, and that's what makes them so imminent. But I know Nevia, sickle cell disease, please educate me if I'm incorrect, but it affects people of all different types of generations, not just the youth. Tell me, how do you think, like, what do you think is the difference between how youths view advocacy versus how adults may view advocacy?
Sickle cell definitely affects all different generations. And as medical technology advances and research, thankfully, finally, has been advancing in sickle cell slowly but surely still. So we still need more research and funding. Thank you. We are starting to see sickle cell warriors, what we call ourselves or what we are fondly called, live to older ages. And so now we have an age bracket called Golden Warriors. I believe that's warriors either aged 50 or 60 and above. And that's something that we did not see very often prior to, current times. Now that we are able to see that, we're starting to still learn even more about sickle cell and what that lived experience looks like at older ages, because everyone knows, once you get older, if you don't use it, you lose it. That happens for everyone, but especially as it relates to someone with a chronic illness as impactful as sickle cell disease. I could you repeat the second part of your question? I'm sorry about that, Karina.
Yeah, of course. Like, how do you think that adults may view these issues differently, since this is a youth
Mm-hmm.
advocacy centered discussion, but it also affects adults very significantly. So, how do you think What role do you think adults play in this discussion?
I think that's actually a great question and something that I'm starting to tackle head on with um, being in these spaces and rooms with folks who are holding the torch as it relates to advocacy and change making. Obviously, a lot of them are elders. Like, I feel like I just became an adult like 3 days ago. So I still hold the bridge between like youth and adult life. And it's definitely a very interesting space to be in because I still have the fire and the spirit and the innovative foresight that the youth have, but I also definitely have a very deep respect for all the work that the adults who are in advocacy have done to be able to pave the way for us. I think that from my perspective, the adults' viewpoint on advocacy, at least as it relates to the circles that I'm in with sickle cell, is that education was the number one thing of priority and oftentimes one of the only things. And while education and information is extremely important, we're currently in the age of information and we're processing information like hotcakes. Like there's not as much of a slow burn and ingestion of the information that it used to be before, and it's not as inaccessible as it used to be before. I say that to say a lot of the sickle cell conferences that do exist to date are extremely beautiful and they're highly educational and informative, but oftentimes it stops there. And while that in and of itself is a beautiful thing, I think that our current generation is learning to take things a step further. We're educated, we're informed, we have access to all the things. Now, what do we do with it? And I think that it's a beautiful space to be in when you have that awareness and that drive to push further. Now's the time for us to be connecting intergenerationally with the people who were able to pave the way before. Just like Nicole was saying, it's really beautiful when the adult advocates are able to be allies for us by amplifying our voices, and not just our voices, but our initiatives, finding the resources to give us so that we can use the information that they gave us and be able to push it forward with programming, with tangible resources, and with really finding ways to change the lived experience and impacting people on a day-to-day basis. I think that finding a way to really lean into that pivot is going to be a game changer for us as we help change society.
Wow, that's very compelling story that you have to share. And I think it definitely shows how, like, I like how you said it's always changing, like the youth are really like taking it a step further. So I want to kind of tie back to something Jeremiah said earlier about how sometimes youth are the challenges that we see as youth advocates. Do you see any hope for that changing in the future? And if so, what does that look like?
So yes, I do see hope for that. What I will say is that these days kids are more welcoming to change. And like I said, the world is always changing and people are more welcoming to that. A big problem that tends to happen when it comes to youth advocacy, like I said before, is other youth. They sometimes tend to see that stuff as lame and not kind of when you see someone doing something a little different, you might look at it a certain type of way, and that's how it is with these other kids. They tend to see something that's different and not that acceptant towards it. But I do have hope that people, because I have seen people in our community, more people are wanting to like join youth group. Like for Fire Squad, it started out with a small 10 members and we've now grown to 28 just within a year. So I do see more people stepping up to this type of stuff, and people are more welcoming to it. Because before, with I will say for Fire Squad, we weren't exactly the most confident on having certain events at certain places like football tournaments or at school or hosting pep rallies because we didn't know how it would affect, and kids did kind of look at it a certain way at first, but over time kids did start liking it, and those actually start becoming our biggest things. Like pep rallies, those are our most successful events that we host, and it actually is our best way to get to the youth.
Nice. I like really like how you're using these events that youth do love and youth are crowded around to kind of reach them and impact them in a good way. So, Nicole, how can organizations and adults best show up for youth leaders moving forward?
Well, I'm going to have to stand on some of the things I already said about advocating for young people. And so, with that, I'll say, that happens also when we build those authentic relationships and partnerships, right? And that are very cooperative, and that we see young people really as equals, right, in this work. Also, really seeing young people wholly for who they are, and engaging them. In that same way, right? Being able to have honesty, being able to see all of the things that they bring, and all of the challenges too that are there. I think another way that adults can really support young people in this work is really asking them what they need, helping them get it, and also just really trusting them. There are things that I don't know about that young people are experts about, and really honoring that and creating spaces where they are seen as and treated as experts. And then I would say also getting young people access to training, conferences, experiential learning opportunities, all of that stuff that allows them. Those are things that they can leverage, right? And continue to do the work they're currently doing, but then go so much further with it. And lastly, just a reminder, again, not only to those, not so much maybe for those that are working with young people right now directly, but those that interact with young people in their work, is to really remember to value young people's time and expertise, and their perspectives and voices, because we cannot do this work without young people working side by side with us.
Wow, I think one of the most important things that I love that you highlight is trusting young people with their testimonies, with what they're experiencing, because they have so much to share and they have so much impact that they can make and really advocate for. So, Riley, what gives you hope about the next generation of youth advocates?
What gives me hope about the next generation of young advocates is how they are not afraid to speak up. I have seen how my generation has, when they saw something that was unacceptable, they have stood up for it and they will stand up and fight. I believe that the sense of fight that a lot of people in my generation have is essential for us to foster change and to move through these tough times, and so that we can get to the place that we want and that we all deserve. And so I've seen many of my youth advocates who have stood up against adults, who have stood up against people in positions in power. And by standing up for us and our rights and what we should have, I feel like I've gotten the motivation to keep going. And I think that will help all of us.
Right, I think that's so inspiring. I mean, just hearing about the work that you guys are doing today also gives me my own motivation to continue working and to continue fighting and advocating for what's right. You guys are just so inspirational. Do any of you guys have any piece of advice to any other youth advocate out there, or maybe an organization or an adult that really wants to spotlight youth advocacy?
Absolutely. I think really building off what Nicole said, really leaning into something that interests you or that you can be excited about is a great way to get started. All of us can be and should be active in some sort of way. And it's really fun once you get your feet wet. So I promise the water's warm. Hop on in. If you're thinking about being a youth advocate or you're thinking about creating a change in your community, it's really not going to be as hard as you think, because there are other people out here who are just like-minded like you. And I think that there are tons of organizations that you could partner with, that we need the young fire. Let's do it together. Whether you're at Howard University or any other campus that has a National Council of Negro Women, definitely join, because we are a service-based organization. I think that's a beautiful place to get started. I would also say, as it relates to sickle cell and health equity, finding places to volunteer or get connected, like your local Red Cross, your local Be the Match, or a sickle cell organization like Cayenne Wellness in Southern California. We're always looking for new young faces to really help us have an innovative perspective and keep the fire going.
Yeah, that's amazing. So if anyone out there is listening to this and is thinking but on the fence about being a youth advocate, this is your sign to go out there and start enacting positive change in your community. And thank you guys so much to my wonderful four panelists. Each of you just exemplify how young voices and voices from also all sorts of different backgrounds aren't the future, but they're also working so hard in the present. Thank you guys so much for leading with passion, truth, and purpose. And also, thank you to all of our viewers for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.